Welcome to Inside Eastern Utah. I'm Amanda, and of course, the premise of the show, we like to show you what is going on in your own backyard. Now today, we have a lovely lady on the show with us. So glad that she could stop in. She is a local hairstylist, local author, and possibly therapist. Sherri Mills, the author of I Almost Divorced My Husband But Went on Strike Instead. Sherri, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So
nice.
This book has not only been what your first attempt at actually publishing anything.
Yes.
But also it's changing lives all across the state of Utah. Before we get into the book, which I love, I've read it, I couldn't put it down when I first started reading it, and it has honestly helped me in my own life, Sherri, and I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
But tell me a little bit about yourself. Did you ever imagine that you would be a published author one day?
I never did. I never did. I had a reason for writing this book, and it was because I had seen so many people suffer, and I thought, I've got to do something about this in my business, and listening to people for so long and everything, I just knew that's what my ultimate goal was, not to write a book, but to get this out. And I knew it had to be interesting in order to get it where I wanted it to go.
Well, judging from your beautiful hair, you are a hairstylist, and you've been that for how many years now?
For 45 years.
45
Over 45 years.
You own a little shop on Helper Main Street, Risque, I believe it is called.
And I've been there for 40 years.
That's pretty impressive. That's really amazing. She's kept her doors open, which means you got the it factor. You know, people love you, they come to you, they trust you. And now coming to you for relationship advice, which basically we all look at our hairstylists as, you know, personal therapists. A little bit cheaper, if you will.
Exactly, exactly.
In one shape or form or another, we've all talked to our hairstylist about something. But now you've taken it and you've put it into maybe a more professional mode in this book. Now, I know you are a loving, devoted wife and mother. You are basically the perfect picture of that. But you were pushed to the edge. And that is a life experience that inspired I Almost Divorced My Husband But Went on Strike Instead. Tell us about that.
Well, I had a wonderful husband. I mean, he was the neatest, handsome guy. He had a fantastic personality and good with the kids and everything, but he was a super male chauvinist. He was just the biggest male chauvinist there ever was.
Yeah.
He wouldn't even as much as open the fridge and get anything to eat without me coming home and doing it for him.
Wow.
It's just something. And he says, after we got interviewed with Salt Lake Tribune after I went on strike, he said that he didn't know he was supposed to be any other way because that's how he grew up.
Sure.
That's what it's supposed to be. And so what made me really do it is because I tried everything I could do to try to change him, to change the way he was, and nothing ever worked. And so I knew that I'd tried little tiny strikes or little tiny things that I could do, and they didn't work. So I decided I had to plan. It took me probably about 4 months to plan it. And then it took me 3 more months to decide I could go through with it and make sure I would never quit. And so that's what started the whole thing.
Well, any of us who have been in a committed relationship, obviously married, possibly divorced, many of us as women or even men have done those little tidbits that, you know, oh, you don't appreciate me. Well, I'm going to stop doing this for you. And you're going to notice how much I do, how much I mean to you, and it's going to be a magical fix. Unfortunately, that never works. I mean, how many of us have said, oh, what, you don't like how I fold your underwear? Well, I'm not washing them anymore. And they don't care. And some men will go and they'll throw them in. It doesn't bother them. And
it's not that they don't care. It's, it's that you quit after a while and start doing them again.
Yep.
And they say,
it drives you nuts.
I'll wait her out as long as I can.
Some men even just go out and buy new.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Whatever, it
That's
doesn't matter. But so what was the dramatic difference between those little strikes and the holy mother of strikes, I am done with this?
The contract.
Okay.
And
the contract.
my planning. My planning and my fortitude to make sure that I never ever quit. That's what really was so successful. Because actually, when he started doing everything, I wanted to go up and give him a big kiss. I wanted to thank him.
Congratulate him.
Oh yeah, and say, oh, that was so neat, and it was the hardest thing in the world for me to do, to go back and sit on my chair. I mean, I actually lost 10 pounds when the 8 days that I was on strike because
you were nervous,
just because of the stress.
Yes.
Of it. But I held together, and then he wanted to sign the contract after 3 days. But I knew he was just doing it to get me out of his hair.
Uh-huh.
So I just told him, nope, you've got to read the contract. You've got to make sure the kids understand the contract. Then you've got to have a meeting with your kids, and then we'll negotiate.
Now, let's dive deeper into this contract. What did it say?
Everything. It covered everything. From getting up in the morning, to going on vacation, to how much money everybody makes, and how much to expect of each person. It covered everything.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Because I thought, this is the only time I'm going to have everybody's attention. And I thought the only way I can get it across is to cover everything right now, because I'm not going to do it again. So,
what was the time period of the strike, and what didn't you do?
how long did it last, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, it lasted for 8 days, and the only thing I did do was go lock myself in the bathroom and clean the bathroom, because everybody thought the tooth fairy did that anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the only thing I did do. I didn't do another thing. In fact, the kids would come to me and ask me a question, and I said, I'm not your mother either.
Oh, wow.
Go ask your dad.
That,
so they would actually get on the phone and call him at his busy work.
the strength and willpower that took. I'm sure any mothers out there watching.
Like I said, 10 pounds.
Yeah,
10 pounds.
Absolutely. That is amazing. So basically...
Oh, I have to add this.
Okay.
The reason it probably worked is because I didn't do it with anger.
Yes.
I was angry when it first happened, when I first told him I was on strike. But for the rest of the time, I told him that I was doing it because he was worth it. Because I wanted to stay with him. And I reminded him of people that had gotten divorced, and I said, you're worth it. You're worth it. I want to keep you for the rest of my life, and that's why I'm doing this, and I will not quit. You know, that's what it was all about. So
was there a specific moment where you just said, I can't take it anymore? Or
after I'd written the contract up, you mean? After I'd written the contract up, I put it away for about 2.5 months, I think, just to get my brain to the point where I knew I wouldn't quit. And the time that came was when I'd sent the kids to the store, and they came back with the wrong ingredients. And so, and not only that, but they'd stayed. It took them, I was in the middle of fixing supper, and they had taken about probably a half hour longer than what they should have taken. And so I got mad at them and told them, get back to the store and get the right stuff. And I was pretty angry, and my husband come running up the stairs, and he said, if you want these kids to get the right stuff, why don't you go to the store yourself and do your own job?
Oh.
I said, oh,
wrong thing
this
to say.
Is it.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I know I'll never give up. Because he had never done anything like that before.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that just wasn't like him.
Yeah.
But he was kind of angry, and then I was kind of mad at the kids, and I was kind of raising my voice, and he didn't like that. So I think but that's the thing. I thought, nobody's going to tell me that. So that's when it happened.
So, long story short, you took this mind-blowing move, and it worked out for the better. He signed the contract, and
yes.
You guys are happy and looking to spend the rest of your years together in married bliss.
Mm-hmm. And it was married bliss the minute that because what he didn't sign the contract because he was whipped or anything like that.
Sure.
He signed the contract because he did it all for 8 days. And that's the first time he ever realized what I did.
Yeah.
And he said, in fact, when he said he wanted to sign the contract, I said, I bet you're exhausted. And he said, I am, but you've been doing it all along. And he says, I can't believe I've been putting you through that. So that's why he did it, is because, and that's why everything worked out so well, is because he went through it himself, and he knew what I had gone through.
I think, obviously, we always say that, a relationship is a partnership. Things need to be shared 50-50 in any way, shape, or form. And that not only includes men doing housework and possibly women out there having a job if they can to contribute if needed, but also sharing the emotional baggage. Just maybe that little backup from your husband saying, okay, maybe I'll go to the store for you since the kids messed it up. I'll take them back, see where they went wrong.
Exactly.
Instead of putting it on you. Just taking that extra thought to say, all right, she's probably had enough and dealt with so much. But with this, I almost divorced my husband but went on strike instead. You are recommending that women find their own means to happiness. You're recommending that they don't do exactly what you did?
Oh, if they read my book, they won't have to go on strike.
Yeah.
This book actually makes it so you don't have to go on strike. I actually have how to do it if they're to the point where they're going to leave, because if somebody's going to leave, then it's better to do that. But if somebody reads this book, they won't go on strike because they will know how to handle things. They'll know how to do things. One of the things I actually say in the book is that help is not helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but that's the truth. Because, and that's what the problem with men, that's the problem men have, is because they think they're helping and they think, oh, I don't know what to do. She never tells me what to do, you know, or she tells me, but what happens is he doesn't know what help means. Men don't know what help means. Does it mean to follow you around and help you with everything? Help you take the groceries out? What? Something in between? And so what I have in this book is I have shared responsibilities. And I have, in fact, I asked this one guy that was in my chair one day, I said, why don't you go to the back of the book and pick out 5 things, because I've got all the things that women do in the back of the book. And I said, pick out 5 things that you can do for the rest of your life. And he swung around and he said, for the rest of my life? And I said, well, she's got 75 things that she's got to do for the rest of her life. Yep. And I said, and you both work. And that's what makes it easy, is because if he's got something that he's got to do that is his responsibility, it doesn't matter who does what, because there's people out there there's women out there with 15 kids and they do it. It matters who feels responsible for what and who feels guilty or inadequate if it doesn't get done. That's what matters.
Now, Sherri, before we go to the break, there's a rising divorce rate across the nation, the world. There's just not the same value in marriage, and I know that your number one thing is try everything before you call it quits.
Everything.
What would be the number one thing you would want either person in a relationship or somebody who's looking to get into a relationship take away from I almost divorced my husband, but I went on strike instead?
That if you have children, if you're married and you have children, that if you get a divorce, you're still going to be hooked to that person for the rest of your life. So it might as well be under one roof. And one of the things I state very firmly is that you loved your husband once. When you first got married, you loved him then. And so what happens is you just you take little curves and take little curves, and pretty soon you've lost that love somewhere. Well, you can get it back. Because if you loved him once, you can love him again. And so that's the biggest thing that I would say.
All right, Sherri. Well, all you viewers out there, stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about more about meeting in the middle, Sherri's statewide book tour, and hopefully to become nationwide one day, and also writing for men, from men's perspectives. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Inside Eastern Utah. Welcome back to Inside Eastern Utah. Today on the show we have a special guest, Sherri Mills, author of I Almost Divorced My Husband, But I Went on Strike Instead. Now, Sherri has been previewed on Studio 5 on KSL, also Channel 4, Red Book Magazine, which is pretty exciting, Sherri. Also, what is it, Women's Magazine in England, and numerous radio talk shows across the United States.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive. From one book, one life experience has opened up so many doors for you.
It has.
Well, I think it's great.
Pretty interesting.
We have to remember, though, Sherri, that you did start off with a little shop on Helper Main Street as a hairdresser, Risque Beauty, and that is still open for business. You're still doing hair.
When I was on my tour, I have a new person working for me, and her name is Caitlin Iverson, and she's there for like when I have to be gone a lot. And she was off for a little while to have her baby, but now she's back. So I at least have somebody to count on when I have to be gone, because I get called out a lot for a lot of things. So.
Great. And Katie is wonderful. She actually cuts my hair, and so she's a wonderful person. Yeah. So if somebody wanted to make an appointment with Katie or with Risque Beauty, how can they do that?
They can call 472-5503, and then if nobody's there, it gives my home phone number. They can call me, and I can let her know.
Perfect.
I don't know her home phone number, so
maybe we won't be giving that out on television. However, 472-5503.
Yes.
And you can make an appointment at Risque. Make yourself beautiful. Everybody loves to feel good about themselves. Now, Sherri, you mentioned a book tour. What was it like going on tour? You've only stayed within the state because that's all you've had time for.
Yeah, I haven't had time to do anything else. I've been on a lot of book signings, and one of the things it actually made myself totally exhausted, but it's been so worth it, because every single time I sign books, I have at least one person, and usually a lot of people, that'll come up to me and say, thank you so much for what you're doing. And I'd actually have people come up and whisper in my ear and say, please don't stop, please don't stop.
And you're not stopping.
I'm not stopping. I will never stop. I will never stop.
Now,
till the day I die.
you told me an interesting story of a man in Costco who actually inspired your second book that will
Yes.
be out soon, we hope.
Yes, he came in. I didn't know that I'd talked him into buying the book, but he sent me an email, and he says, I'm sure glad you talked me into buying that book. He says, because I loved it. And he said, in fact, I bought 3 for my kids. And he says, but I felt kind of a little bit bad about it because you're talking to women in that book. He says, is there any way you can write a couple of chapters in your next book where you're talking to men? So I sent it to my publisher, and they said, Sherri, can you write a whole book where you're talking to men? And I said, sure.
Maybe. You found that it's a little more difficult than first anticipated.
Than what I thought it was going to be. Yes, it was. I'm telling you, it's the hardest thing I've ever done because I just thought I could just write something else and talk to men, but you have to talk to men a certain way.
You do. Women, you know, everybody says women are so complicated. You say one thing, you mean another, blah, blah, blah. But men, they have their own little private lingo.
They do. They do. And so when I first wrote it, I actually went home and they wanted me to write it in 2 months. And I thought I could. And my editor said,
Sure.
Sherri, you can't. And I said, I can too. So I wrote almost a whole book. And I sent it to my editor. She said, Sherri, it's too fluffy.
Yeah.
This is not a man book.
No.
And so I started again, and I actually put a mannequin in front of me. And I'm a man mannequin.
That's a little
acted like I was
creepy.
talking to him, and it still didn't work. So I had to spend almost a month and a half doing research online to see what men read. And I discovered that they have to have a lot of white space.
Okay.
They have to have a title before every paragraph. And the reason for that, I found out as I was going into it, is that what they'll do is they'll read the title. If the title sounds good, they'll read the paragraph. And then they'll read the next title. If the next title sounds good, they'll read the next paragraph. So that's why you have to do that. So my whole second book is almost, you know, a title before almost every paragraph.
Well, you think of what do you see men reading? You see them reading sports magazines, newspapers, you know, and I'm not trying to stereotype or categorize, but
that
makes
men,
sense.
Men in general. And I mean, when you get online and that's what they say, it must be everybody. Must be. And I talk to men too. I says, this is what they say. And they'll say, yep, that's right.
So in this second book, Sherri, what can men expect from your point of view?
Well, what I do in the second book is I tell men things that they actually want to know. Their wives want to tell them, but they don't dare.
Okay.
I say